Welcome to MyESAT's SAT Essentials video series. This is a 10-part, personally paced SAT program that's designed to provide quality SAT preparation to all students. The series is split evenly between the three sections of the SAT: math, writing, and critical reading. The lectures cover effective SAT test-taking strategies, review frequently tested topics, and provide practice problems that familiarize and prepare students for the real exam. The SAT Essentials video course is the foundation for all MyESAT courses and is used in conjunction with live MyESAT workshops. At MyESAT, our mission is to pave the way for brighter futures empowered by education for all students.
Hi guys, this is Adam again, and thanks for coming back and joining me for our last critical reading video lecture ever. I bet that it just breaks your heart that we're at the close of our time together. But just because you won't be seeing me and Maggie anymore doesn't mean that we aren't here thinking about you. Come back and visit us anytime. These lectures can be replayed one time as an excellent review or 100 times if you have no life. Just kidding. I really have enjoyed teaching you guys. So, today, we're going to be talking about long passages. Wow, the long ones, huh? This is where the critical reading jungle gets even crazier. Long passages are oftentimes confusing, long, and even so dry your Aunt Beatrice would cry just to read them. That's why it is important to practice the SATs. You have to train your pain tolerance and your ability to read and decipher these complex passages. Unfortunately, the SAT is not a test you can just wing. And I would know. In high school, I was the type of student who loved winging things. If there was a midterm on Friday, I wouldn't start studying until the Thursday night. Or if there was a project due on Monday, I would begin the Friday before. And I usually could get away with a cramming session or two. But I soon found that with the critical reading, this was not the case. The critical reading section of the test is a test of skills, not knowledge. And skills cannot be crammed. They have to be developed and finely honed like a samurai before battle. What? Today we have on our agenda long passage strategy and related tips. Let's dive in. Okay, so starting with long passage strategy. SAT passages are tricky like leather pants on a summer day. You have to read passages on the SAT in a very different way than you are used to reading for school. That's because in school, you are used to reading with particular attention on details, facts, and dates. Think about it. High school teachers test you on facts, on dates, on names, on specific details. If you are walking into a history test, you will need to know what happened, when it happened, who was involved, etc. You don't have to know the author's mood or organizational layout. That's why, as students, we're trained to carefully read and remember in a way that is all wrong for the SAT. The SAT, on the other hand, will never test you on how well you remember facts or information. Instead, it tests how well you can understand the meaning of passages. Because of this, you're going to do a special kind of reading that we call apprehending. So what is apprehending? Apprehending is a very fast reading process that ignores details and focuses only on the main ideas and logical flows. Imagine you are a painter trying to draw a sketch of a building. You're going to fill in the building structure and shape, but you'll skip over the details like windows and doors. You just don't have time for that kind of detail. When you apprehend passages, you will skim them at a quick speed and with the goal of understanding the main ideas only. You're not going to let yourself get bogged down with details like dates, facts, names, or other petty information. Make sense? Okay, so how do you do this apprehending, huh? Let's try a short paragraph together and see if you wizards can figure it out. I'll give you a few moments to read this paragraph. Then I want you to quickly jot a one-sentence summary of the main idea of the passage. Jot the sentence on your notebook. Remember to extract the main ideas from the passage only. Okay, stop. Did you jot your one-sentence summary? Ready or not, we're going to go over it together. If you are reading this passage for school, you might have taken special note of the underlined material. You would have tried to remember the important dates like 1835 or the important titles such as On the Origins of Species. However, since you are trying to apprehend the paragraph, you should have skipped over all those details and only paid attention to the main ideas in the paragraph. Instead, think, what kind of main ideas can I take away from the passage? You should have had something like this main idea summary. Here's what I wrote. Charles Darwin playfully observed animal life on the island and ultimately came to believe that the species mutated over time. See? Can you see how I skipped over all the other little details that aren't at the heart of the message? You should be able to form a main idea summary in your head for each paragraph as you read. As you start to apprehend quickly, do make sure you apprehend each paragraph before you move on to the next. Don't read so quickly you miss the whole idea entirely. Let's move on to our next tip. Psst. Sidebar. You will want to very quickly sidebar the passage before you begin reading it. That is the first thing you do when you start looking at the passage. Sidebars will make it easier, faster, and more efficient for you to apprehend the passage. It will help you focus your attention on the passage parts that are relevant to the questions and skim the parts that are not. So what is a sidebar? I'm glad you asked. Have you noticed all those great line references and questions? They tell you exactly where to start looking for the answers. Why not use this to our apprehending advantage? Before apprehending the passage, take a look at these line references. For example, in question number 2, there is a line reference for lines 2 through 4. Now quickly draw a bar on the side of the line reference. See my line next to lines 2 and 4? You see, a sidebar is like a little note to yourself, or at least it will remind you which part of the passage have questions related to it. Once you have done this exercise a few times, it should take you only a fraction of a minute. It should be a super fast process taking almost no time, but it's also setting you up to save time later on. Now, when you go to apprehend the passage, these sidebars will come in handy. Everywhere you see a sidebar, you know there is a question that is related to the material next to it. So slow down for passage portions that have sidebars. Make sure you truly understand those portions because you know that there will be questions related to it. And what about the portions where there are no sidebars? Well, you know that you can go quicker on these sections, almost breezing through them. Just make sure you still have a top-level view of the main ideas, but you do not have to be nearly as nitpicky. After you apprehend these passages, sidebars and all, it's time to attack the questions. Now here is some more strategy. Should you attack the questions in chronological order? No, not necessarily. You should always answer questions with line references first. These are the ones in which you have already sidebarred the passage. Why? These are the fastest because it points directly to the part of the passage to where the answer lies. Remember what I said about picking the fruit in critical reading too? If you have the choice to grab some easy points, definitely go grab these first. So which one of these questions should we answer first? Yes, questions 2 and questions 3. Those are the two with line references. Let's look at the questions again. Question 2 refers to lines 2 through 4, and question 3 relates to line 57. But does that mean you only pay close attention to those 3 lines? No, that's because there is something called context. You have to read the area around line references too in order to get a good sense of the context of the lines. If you're given a treasure map buried in a field, do you want to just dig a 1-foot area where X marks the spot? Or would you rather dig in 10 feet area around where it should be? Yeah, that's right. You'd make sure to dig around to ensure you found it. In this example, our reference line is the gold, so you want to make sure you read around the line to get the answer right. Generally, read the sentence above and the sentence below the reference as well as the lines referenced. See how I have areas shaded? That's how much you want to expand your detailed reading. If you are still struggling with the answer, you will need to go back and expand your reading even more. Oftentimes, the answer is hidden a little bit away from the line referenced. Then you are ready to start answering the questions. However, here's another tip. Make sure to leave the overall passage questions for the end. Why? Because every time you answer a question, you will learn something more about the passage. Therefore, after you finish answering all specific questions, you will be best equipped to answer overall passage questions. For example, question 1 here asks about the author's attitude in the passage. This is an example of an overall question that would best be answered last. Therefore, skip question number 1 and come back to it after you have finished all the rest. Now let's do these questions. I'll give you 5 minutes to answer the following 4 questions. Remember, we've already sidebarred the passage together. Now apprehend the passage. Then skip question 1, answer questions 2 through 4, and then come back to question 1 at the end. I'm going to flip first to the passage for you to read and then to each question for you. However, feel free to pace yourself. Use your rewind and pause buttons to go back and forth between the passage. As you go along, please do jot down your answers for each questions on your notebook. Make sense? Time's up. I'll give you a moment to grade yourself. Ready? Of course you are. I would expect nothing less. Let's go over the answers together now. Let's start by looking at question 2. It reads, to the author, the distinction between the words primal and primitive is that what? Remember, always head to the passage to look for the answers before you look at the answer choices. Be sure that you can put your finger on the answers in the passage before you circle your answer. I can't emphasize this point enough. You absolutely must locate the evidence in the passage before you circle your final answer. Okay? Let's see. Let's read lines 1 through 6. We can no longer pretend, as we did for so long, that Indians are a primitive people. No, they are a traditional people, that is, a first or original people. A primal people, the inheritors of a profound and exquisite wisdom distilled by long ages on this earth. So it sounds like the author really likes the Indians, right? He does say that they are inheritors of a profound and exquisite wisdom. If somebody said that about me, I'm pretty sure that would be a compliment. So therefore, we can assume that when the author says the Indians are not a primitive people, but instead they are a primal people, that primitive must be bad and primal must be not bad. Now back to the answer choices. Answer choice C is the correct answer. It reads, while the former has some negative connotations, the latter has neutral or positive ones. Okay, good. Time to move on to question 3. Question 3 reads, the word apprehension in line 57 means what? Time to head back to the passage for some magical inspiration. Let's read the sentence that contains the word apprehension. Nature is the great mysterious, the religion before religion, the profound intuitive apprehension of the true nature of existence attained by sages of all epochs everywhere on earth. The whole universe is sacred. Man is the whole universe. And the religious ceremony of life itself, the miraculous common acts of every day. Wow, that's a mouthful. So what does apprehension mean here? Before we go any further, I have a tip to share with you. When you are dealing with vocabulary and context questions like this one, that means questions that ask you about how a particular word is used. Try plugging in the answer choice into a sentence to see if it makes sense. Do not try to just circle the definition of the word in question. If you try that, you'll be in trouble. Because look, I'm going to show you something creepy. All the answer choices are words that all are a different meaning of the word apprehension. Apprehension might mean understanding when it's used in that way, like you apprehend or understand the problem. It might also mean misgiving when it is used in another way, like you are apprehensive over a tricky dilemma. And it could also mean trepidation, concern, or security when it is used in those ways. So basically, vocabulary and context questions are not vocabulary tests. All these answer choices mean the same thing as the vocab word. Instead, the question asks you, how is this word specifically used in the passage? Going back to our tip, plug in the vocab word. Let's see how this works. The correct answer to this question is answer choice A. So if I plug understanding into the sentence in place of apprehension, what do I get? The sentence would read, the profound intuitive understanding of the true nature of existence attained by sages of all epochs, everywhere on earth, the whole universe is sacred. Man is the whole universe, and the religious ceremony is life itself, the miraculous common acts of every day. That makes sense. It was this understanding of existence that was attained by these wise sages. Fantastic. See how vocabulary and context questions are considered among the easiest for reading passages? You don't need to know the meaning of the vocab word, you just need to figure out how it's used. And plugging it into the passage is a great way to help you find the right answer. Let's move on to question 4. It reads, which of the following statements would the author most likely agree with? This is a 3-pronged statement question. These can be the most time-consuming type of question, but it's also generally very straightforward. The plan of attack for these 3-pronged questions is to work with each statement at a time. That's right, just take them one at a time. 3-pronged questions are actually like 3 really easy questions but fused together in one long but still easy question. Once you get the hang of these, you are going to find that they are one of the most straightforward. Statement 1. The Indian religion is very different than any religions of the present day. Okay, let's head back to the passage and find out if the author would likely agree with this. Let's read the purple highlighted lines 9 through 12. The author writes this regarding Indian religion. In fact, it derives from a holistic vision known to all mystics and great teachers of the most venerated religions of the world. So the author is saying that the Indian religion has the same holistic vision as many other great religions. In that case, we should eliminate statement 1. There's no way the author would believe that Indian religion is very different from other religions when he just said that it has something in common with many religions. Now let's look at statement 2. There are some commonalities in religious belief across the different tribes. Again, as always, let's head back to the passage for inspiration. Inspiration strikes right around here. Let's read the purple highlighted lines 39 through 42. The old way, what the Lakota call wound cage, our way of doing, is very consistent throughout the Indian nations, despite the great variety of cultures. So the author is saying that all Indian nations have very similar religious values. So in that case, yes, statement 2 is correct. The author would probably agree that there are commonalities in beliefs across the tribes. See? One at a time. These questions are not bad at all. Now let's check out statement 3. Religion was not a significant part of Indian culture. Back to the passage, we see purple highlighted lines 44 through 46, which say Indian existence is not separable from Indian religion, which is not separable from the natural world. Wow, sure sounds like religion is probably a big part of Indian life. So the statement 3 is false. The author would probably not agree that religion is not a big part of Indian culture. So now what? We know only statement 2 is correct. Therefore, B is the correct answer. But we're not done yet. We can't forget about question 1. When we skip questions, make sure you don't forget to go back to them. That's why I like to circle my answer right on the page itself. That way, I can clearly see if I haven't finished answering any question. Question 1 asks, the author's attitude towards Indian religion is one of what? Because we've done so much work with the passage already, we probably have a pretty good guess already regarding how the author feels about Indians. But let's peek one last time at the passage. Pay attention to the blue highlighted words. The author uses words like universal and profound to describe Indian culture. Dang, from that passage, I sure get the feeling the author likes Indians. If someone called me profound and universal, I'm pretty sure I would take that as a compliment. Unfortunately, only my mother calls me profound. Thanks, Mom. I am special. Let's look at the answer choices. Answer choice B, respect, is correct. The author feels respect for Indian culture. But hold on one minute. You might say answer choice A, worship, is also positive. Is it possible that the author feels worshipful of Indian culture? No, it's not. And here's why. Worship is a little bit too positive, isn't it? Worship is a pretty strong word. Like, it's cool if you like Justin Bieber, but if you worship him, I don't know. That might be a little bit too extreme. But anyway, my point is this. Sure, the author sure likes the Indians, but you don't see him say anything about wanting to put them on a pedestal and worshiping them. That's just too extreme, and it leads to our next handy-dandy SAT tip. The extreme answer is extremely unlikely to be correct. Why? Okay, let's get into the test maker's head now. Test makers are hesitant to put any extremist, outrageous opinion pieces on the SAT. In fact, all passages on the SAT are heavily scrutinized to make sure that they are fair to everyone and free from biased or inflammatory and controversial topics. Therefore, it's unlikely any correct answer about the passage will be extreme. Also, it's just hard for extreme answers to ever be right. They are too easy to disprove. So remember that. Eliminate extreme answer choices like worship because they are not likely going to be correct. Now I want to give you one more handy-dandy and super secret SAT tip. Be race sensitive, because test makers are. That's right. Just like test makers won't put extreme passages on the SAT, they also won't put racist passages on the SAT. Make sense? If they put a racist passage on the exam, they would absolutely get sued. Faster than Michael Jackson at a preschool. So therefore, there is absolutely no way there will be a racist passage on the test. What does this mean for you? It means this. Whenever a question asks about an author's opinion about a minority, the correct answer is never a negative one. Let me show you what I mean. Going back to the specific question, answer choice D, disappointment, and answer choice E, denunciation, are negative words. In case you didn't know, denunciation means a public put-down. That's why these two answer choices could never be correct. In fact, even if you knew nothing about the passage, I could immediately cross off answer choice D and E and then just take a guess for the correct answer. Answer choice B, respect, is the correct answer. Now let's try another passage together. I'm going to flip first to the passage for you to read and then to each question for you. However, feel free to pace yourself. Use your rewind and pause buttons to go back and forth between the passage. As you go along, please do jot down your answers for each question on your notebook. Make sense? Okay, time is up and let's go over the answers. I'll give you a moment to grade yourself here. We still have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to go over the answers rather quickly. But remember, we'll cover many practice passage questions that are specifically your level in our live workshop titled Reading Passage Keys. Question 1. According to the first paragraph, the Roman Catholic Church primarily served as what? Let's peek at the passage. It reads, "There are no colleges or formal organizations except the Roman Catholic Church that promoted the beliefs, histories, or traditions of the village people." That "except" means that the church did promote beliefs, history, and tradition. Back to the question now. Answer choice A is the correct answer. The church was the only unifying institution that instilled common culture in the United States. Question 2 now. In line 23 through 24, the author suggests that in comparison to villages in southern Italy, American towns are what? Let's search for some inspiration. The passage reads, "The importance of family life in southern Italy is difficult to compare with anything in our modern experience, for even the smallest American towns do not develop such close relationships between towns and townspeople." Back to the question. That's why answer choice B is correct. American towns are more impersonal. There aren't as many close relationships. Let's shimmy on over to question 3. In line 29, bonds most nearly means what? Vocabulary and context questions. Don't forget our handy-dandy tip, plug in the vocab word. The passage reads, "Under these conditions, the bonds between members of a community became as strong as those between members of the same family." The correct answer here is answer choice B, ties. Let's plug that back in and test it. Under these conditions, the ties between members of a community become as strong as those between members of the same family. Sounds like music to my ears. Now lastly, question 4, another fun three-pronged question. But now we know. There is nothing to be scared of regarding three-pronged questions. In fact, they are among the most straightforward of them all. The question reads, which of the following statements would the author likely agree with? And now we have our three statements. 1. Life in the United States is very similar to that in southern Italy. 2. The church played a significant role in the maintenance of culture in the United States. 3. Family bonds are more developed in Italy than in the United States. Heading back to the passage. First off, we see no indicator that the author thinks that life in the U.S. is very similar to Italy. Actually, the passage lists many differences. So statement 1 is false. What about 2? Does the church play a significant role? Yes, sir, it does. The passage says, as highlighted in purple, that no college or formal organization except the Roman Catholic Church promote the beliefs, history, and traditions of the village people. So yes, absolutely. Statement 2 is a green light. What about 3? Are family bonds more developed in Italy? Yes, I think so. The author says, as highlighted in yellow, that the importance of family life in southern Italy is difficult to compare with anything in our modern experience. So back to the question. If statement 2 and 3 are correct, then answer choice D is our correct answer. See, three-pronged questions aren't bad at all if you take them one statement at a time. And now, just before we wrap up critical reading for this entire video series, I want to give you some quick review of literary terms. Sometimes in passages, they will ask you to identify certain writing technique terms. You will have to be familiar with all the common ones, so I hope you paid attention in English class because that will come in handy. But if not, we'll review many of the top terms right now. An allusion. An allusion is a reference within a literary work to a historical, literary, or biblical character, place, or event. An example of this would be, "Come, come, Nerissa, for I long to see quick Cupid's post that comes so mannerly." That's Shakespeare. Feel free to look it up. An idiom is a common expression that has acquired a meaning that differs from its literal meaning. An example of this is, "It's raining cats and dogs," or "That cost me an arm and a leg." Can't use your arm and a leg as currency. An oxymoron is this, the association of two terms that seem to contradict one another. An example of this would be wise fool or jumbo shrimp. A paradox, a statement that seems contradictory on the surface but often expresses a deeper truth. An example of a paradox would be, "All men destroy the things they love." Alliteration. The repetition of similar sounds, usually consonants, at the beginning of words. An example of this would be sweet, scented stuff. Imagery is language that brings to mind sensory impressions. An example of this would be Homer's description of dawn as rosy-fingered in the Odyssey, which is a book. Caricature, a description or characterization that exaggerates or distorts a character's prominent features, usually for purpose of mockery. An example of this would be a cartoon of Abraham Lincoln with a giant top hat, a very thick beard, and extremely sunken eyes. Go to your nearest theme park to find one. A simile is a comparison of two things that uses words like or as. Love is like a fire is a simile. A pun is a play on words that uses the similarity in sound between two words with distinctly different meanings. An example of this would be, the title of the play, The Importance of Being Earnest, is a pun on the words earnest, which means serious, and sober, and the name Ernest. Personification, the use of human characteristics to describe animals, things, or ideas. Using the word babbling to describe a brook is an example of personification. Cliché, a formal expression that has been used and reused so many times that it's lost its excessive power. An example of this would be happy as a clam or eyes like a hawk. Hyperbole, an excessive overstatement or exaggeration of fact. For an example, I've told you 1,000,000 times already. I got that from my mom. And irony. Irony usually emphasizes the contrast between the way things are expected to be and the way they actually are. An example of this would be, medieval people believed that bathing would harm them when in fact not bathing led to the unsanitary conditions that caused the bubonic plague. Take a shower, people. Fantabulous. And this concludes our final class of critical reading. And you know what's up next, right? When you have finished the lecture along with Math 3 and Writing 3, take practice test number 4 from the official SAT study guide. That may or may not be your last practice test with my ESAT. In either case, I wish you the best of luck in your studies. Goodbye for now, but remember, you can come back and visit anytime. The My ESAT team and I will be here for you whenever the urge to study strikes.